It's so early, we're gonna head down to Classic Speed so we can work on RWB Victoria. I don't know if you guys remember, but we've been working on RWB Victoria for quite some time, and it ended up as a pandemic project for me where I basically rewired the whole car and did the AIM PDM 32 system, full standalone for the body harness, and then got it running, but we had to send it down to Classic Speed for some finishing touches because a lot of the wiring that I did was my first time to completely do body wiring, especially using the AIM PDM system. After 11 months, I got it running. After that, we decided to add more aero. The adding more aero bit got carried away, and I've been a huge fan of World Time Attack and I've always wanted to join, but obviously with zero experience I decided to tackle on a project, and what better project than my first RWB Victoria. So recently, with the help of Fran, we were able to scan RWB Victoria, and we did a top to bottom scan, believe it or not, and then we ran the CFD or the simulation in AirShaper. It's an online app, it's very cheap, and we got the most basic profile for it, and we have a report which I'll go over with you guys, and I'll talk over it to my understanding of what we think needs to be fixed with the car. So the issue with the scan that we first uploaded was when we scanned Victoria, it was on a lifter, which means the suspension arms are on full droop or full down, which means also the ride height of the car is wrong. So ride height is such an important factor because during maximum downforce, your ride height changes, and we have to sort of design the aero based off the ride height target that we have. A lot of the World Time Attack cars actually have laser sensors built into the chassis so that they can measure the ride height during full compression, especially when the cars are cornering at high G loads, because what happens is obviously one side dips and it loses the ground effect, so to speak, because it's too close to the ground, and the other side lifts off as you're turning. A lot of the World Time Attack cars have sort of like a double suspension, so one for regular compression rebound, and when full downforce takes effect, the second one actually sort of pushes up on the first one to make sure that they don't bottom out. This video might be a little bit too geeky and too boring for some of you, but trust me, there's a lot of learning that I have in terms of aerodynamics, thermodynamics, because cooling the car also was a big issue for us, especially later on, because I do want to eventually boost the car to get more power, baby. But the idea of Time Attack is like 3 flyer laps: your warm-up lap, and then your attack lap, and then your cool down lap. So we don't need maximum efficiency that we're doing a sprint race of 10 to 15 laps. We just need to set the fastest lap time. And a lot of the things that I've been doing recently have been in pursuit of the fastest lap track time. That's why I ended up crashing the GT2 RS in BRC, because I was trying to set a really fast lap time, and if I didn't crash the car, I would have probably been top 3 easily. So the thing with the GT2 RS is we're gonna go super crazy on that also. So we're gonna have 2 projects which are very focused on track work, and the GT2 RS obviously a different ethos because it's a newer car, and then the 993 C2 RWB Victoria, which is completely ground up build, and excited to see which one performs better. But obviously I think the GT2 RS, because it's more Porsche modern technology, it's almost twice the price of the RWB Victoria. But the RWB Victoria is homegrown. It's been one of my longest running RWB projects also, and I've only gotten to use it a few times on the road because we're always tinkering with it. That's why I ended up building another RWB so that I had a road RWB. We're gonna get a pull. not be the fastest car in my fleet, but it is one of the most fun cars to drive. I really love driving this car. I have 22,700 kilometers on it already, and I'm supposed to bring this car and park it already in the farm so I can move some cars around so that we can use some other cars, but I really can't. I love driving this car. It's one of my favorite out-of-town cars. So, as many of you know, I love Aero. That's why I drive the 458 GT3 on the road. This is a original Ferrari GT3 kit, proper Aero design. And we got the full front kit, which is the front bumper, the fenders, the rear quarter, and then the rear wing, and then the rear diffuser. Went super crazy with that. That's why I also bought the DDE 550 Maranello, because it had the crazy Aero made by Michael Essa. This is the crazy diffuser with a huge APR rear wing, along with the side running boards that was fabricated, and the full carbon front lip. This car looks so good, although I do want to make a proper wide body kit. One of my favorite versions of the 550 is the Pro Drive 550, which is a super crazy wide body kit. But today is talking about RWB Victoria. RWB Victoria, as I mentioned, is my first RWB, and we've been developing this crazy Aero project for a while now, and I think it's time, because in the Philippines we don't have much crazy Aero project work. Normally I would love to run air suspension in all my cars, especially the cars I don't track heavily, because air suspension is more practical for cars with this huge lip overhang right here. But for this car, we want to remove the variable of the airbags heating up and changing ride height during testing. So the nice thing with standard springs, you basically remove that variable when you set the ride height. It's basically just the downforce that are affecting it, and not the heat of the air tank and the air lines and the airbags. So I want to give a huge shout out to Olin's Philippines for hooking us up with some coilovers. It's my first time to use Olin's, and I'm pretty excited to see how it'll handle with this car. Now, I'll also go over the AirShaper report that was given to me, and we made a few mistakes on the first upload, so we're actually going to run a simulation again on this car. But for now, we also have to unload RWB Noah. So we have RWB Noah here from the Motul flagship store. The last time we ran this car, we had issues. What's pretty weird is I've changed the crank sensor on this car already to a new one, and when the car is cold, it starts up pretty fine. But when the car is warm, it basically misfires and sometimes doesn't want to give a crank signal. Oh, there's still trophies inside. That's so funny. For an air-cooled car, this car sounds the business. Okay, we're doing a jumper on the battery. Hopefully we get more power. There you go, there you go. Okay, Noah is properly warmed up. Let's get some revs in. No flame tune here though. Okay, I could do sound checks all morning, but we should get straight to work. So the boys started working on the car already. Didn't wait for me. I'm going to be unboxing the shocks. My first suspension from Olin's. Look at that beauty. So we went with the basic track setup. This isn't the external reservoir version of it. Some wrenches. It looks so professional. Wow, it's got some weight to it. Here's our air kit that we removed, and we're gonna save this for another project, but for now we're stripping it down. At least that way also we can actually fix the ducting even more for the radiator. Okay, I think we bent the stab link. This is not good, hanging everything. Initially, we're going to lower the suspension, so I'm going to max it out to this ring first and see if that improves our height. The rear is easier. You drop the lower bolt, twist the cup up because we can't move it because the sway bar mount should be oriented that way, and we'll just max the drop. Brand sadly is inside, and then bring back up the suspension and put the bolt back in. Easy peasy. Way better. That's it. Height check, perfect. Nice. And low. Mas mababa? Yeah. But okay rin naman kasi if I sit there, baka mag-equal. Eventually, corner balance pa naman eh. Okay, let's see if we can get it off the lift. I doubt it very much. The car looks very low and the jack is very high. But we're gonna try. Racing. Okay, finally got on the ground. I'm happy with this ride height for now. I took some measurements so that we can give it back to Fran, so we can run the CFD again. This is what the rear looks like now. I think the ground is uneven because this side seems a little higher than the rest, but a while ago that front was also a little higher. But for now, yeah, we'll take some rough measurements of all the points, hoping that the kit is even, and then we'll give it to Fran and run the CFD again and see if we have any ground effect. I might wanna install some air jacks on the car because it's way too low. As you can see, the lower side skirt is barely touching the ground. What's gonna happen probably in cornering, we're going to keep scraping that side skirt, and ideally I'm going to put a rubber lip also on the lower half just to seal off any air coming in or out from the side as well. Okay, so welcome to AirShaper. This is our CFD analysis for Victoria, and this was our third reiteration already. And as you can see, Vicky is creating a lot of drag. The first tab here is the 3D pressure cloud. Vicky in general has drag from the front part of the aero all the way down to the wheels. So technically, when you have deep dish wheels, it creates lots of drag. So the deep dish wheels, because they have that cavity between the face and the barrel of the wheel, generates a lot of drag. That's why for race cars, normally you have the turbo fans, which give you less drag. Off the bat, we've realized that the flat end plate that we used here for the diffuser is actually a wrong design. Most modern time attack cars have sort of a curvature so that when you're hitting the air basically from the front, it's guiding the air around rather than hitting it with a flat edge. So that's an inefficiency right there. We do have lots of air coming out of the fender vent that we've designed, and you can see also here that this is sort of a high pressure area here in the windshield, and then the side skirt also is releasing a lot of turbulent air here. The rear is way more, and I just want to note that I'm not an expert. I watched a tutorial online for the AirShaper app. That's why I'm being able to translate the information to you guys and share my knowledge. But essentially, if we had a really efficient aerodynamic design, you wouldn't see a lot of red. But because this is a high downforce time attack car, definitely the red makes sense because we are trying to create maximum grip from the car. So even here down to the windshield, you have the A-pillar here creating an air separation. So here you have an air separation here. And what's happening here is when the air separates from the car, it creates turbulence, and turbulence creates drag. So that's why we do want to lessen the red bits. But the counterpoint for having a lot of drag is creating a lot of downforce. Now, when you have a lot of downforce, you just need more amount of power so that you can utilize all your downforce. As you can see here, we can improve the wing design also from the back because that is creating downforce. And here also we have separation from the rear glass. Not much we can do there because it is the classic lines of the 911. But for the diffuser, I'm not sure if my ride height is completely correct yet. We're going to have to seal the bottom even more and see if we can reduce this separation or even try to ride lower. But there, you can see through an even separation here, but that is the design of the car already. So here you can see. Next tab here is the surface pressures, where it shows you the high pressure areas. The high pressure area is most likely the flat spot, which is here. This is a flat spot which creates a high pressure area. So technically, if we wanted to improve the design of the aero here, we wanted to create a sort of wedge shape here, which allows us to remove this flat spot here. The flat spot is a high drag area, and what happens is that is a wall. It's almost like sticking your hand out into the wind and not using a blade rather than just stopping the wind. So that's what that looks like, and you can see the high pressure areas generated here. So on the front splitter, you actually don't mind having a high pressure area here, because what's that going to do is going to ram air into our radiator here. As you can see, we also have a high pressure area here on the radiator, which is fine because we need to cool the car. Some high pressure areas over here also along with the lip. Now the lip is blunt faced and we have to improve that. And we do have a high pressure area here also. So this design we have on the lower dive plane is very useful, which we should have implemented also on the top dive plane. We do have some high pressure impact here as well, which is actually fine because again, we're trying to create downforce. Now, if you can see here, there's some high pressure on the headlights, but that is inherent design of the car. The blue is low pressure where the air is separating. So what happens is when the air hits it hard on the headlight, it launches it upward and creates this swirly part here, and it vacuums out. So here again, low pressure. Low pressure areas is what generates the turbulence. That's why you saw a lot of the red forming. Same with the front of the tires, and same with the mirrors. We're creating turbulence because of the side mirrors. That's why most race cars have the GT3 style mirrors, which are very tiny, which allow them to cut through the air much faster. So also because of the design of the car, we do have pressure here. On the wing, we are having low pressure on the lower part of the wing, which is actually not good because we do need the downforce to stick to the bottom of the wing. That's how we actually generate downforce from the wing. It's not from the top blade. So I feel that the angle of the blade could be changed, or the starting design of this side here. So the changing this design might work, or pitching it more might help. I'm not super sure. Again, not an expert here on aerodynamics, but this is so far what we have. So this is interesting. The surface friction tells us where the air is going. So the squiggly lines, as you can see here, allow you to visualize how the air is guiding through. And as you can see here, it's hitting our tire really hard. So ideally, I would want to put sort of fender liner in the back here, so it'll guide the air all the way out to the side, almost like an air curtain. So another one here. We're creating a lot of drag by hitting the tire. That's why we do have the fender vents, in hopes that we can also reduce the amount of high pressure that's building in our fender wells. That's why we also have that here. Now, the lines also, you can see how it affects the car, where the air travels around the curved sections of the car and then reattaches to the car. And this is bad. This is my air filter intake and it is blue. So let's check the pressure cloud. Well, that's fine. There's going to be pressure all the way up to the window, but because this is sucking air, we should be able to get good amount of air for the motor. But ideally, this would be a high pressure zone, but then again, we don't want to create any more drag where it is unnecessary. So again here, high pressure zone. Vertical streamlines. Okay, so this one, you can actually move the streamlines from the center of the car. You can drag this arrow, you can move it to the side, and you can see how the air behaves around the car, around the wing, and that's the downforce you need. So this is when the air attaches underneath the wing and creates the suction for the car to stay on the ground. So one of my issues here is I don't see the rear diffuser doing much work, but we are going to change the vertical streamlines to the horizontal streamlines so you guys can see the activity on the other direction. And this is cool. Long ago, you would have to run the simulation in an actual wind tunnel, which costs millions of dollars. Even here, you can see the swirly lines on how the air behaves through the diffuser over the round fenders, and you can see that this might be an issue, but then again, we won't know until we try to run the car and see if we're creating more turbulence than we're getting downforce benefits. As the air hits the round fender, that's why it is sort of detaching and then reattaching. So problem with the wide bodies is they're not streamlined, but you do get more grip. So there's definitely something to compute for grip advantage versus drag coefficient. So here, right in the middle, we can see how it is going through the radiator and then exiting, and we are creating another high pressure zone over here, but that is fine. So just a quick thought here on the radiator. It looks like a high pressure zone. Hopefully we're able to evacuate air properly. Anyway, we'll go through the horizontal streamline. So the horizontal streamlines will show you if there is air separation. As the air hits the windshield, it does separate up here, and then it sort of tries to reattach again. That's why a proper wing for a car will be technically above the roof height so that you can catch good airflow. And we can see the lower diffuser doing its thing or not doing its thing. This is my worry. So the air all the way on the ground is not doing its thing. So let's raise the airflow up just a little. And now we're at the floor of the car. And I still don't see the diffuser really working its magic. Again, I'm not an expert. I do need help when it comes to translating the ideas that I've learned here in AirShaper, but it's a good guide for us to learn briefly what aerodynamics do and how designing aerodynamic components make a big difference. Problem with this simulation, you do need a high-end scanner to complete scanning a whole car, especially the underneath and the suspension components, and it lasts a lot of man hours. Francis spent almost 3 whole days scanning Victoria in different pieces and trying to align it on the computer. Plus, you need a super fast computer to do the stitching of the data models. Last, you can see how there's a separation in some areas and then a low pressure zone in some areas because there's a high pressure zone in some areas. And it's a little turbulent on the rear end of the car. I think we can actually make, from just this visual, we can make a better ducktail here and create just a little more downforce. But I won't know. What I don't know how to translate is sort of the center balance of the car. Center balance is where the downforce point makes sense in terms of balancing the front downforce and the rear downforce of the car. That's what I still don't understand. And again, this is the noise tab. The noise tab allows us to visualize again. I forgot what they said about this, but it essentially tells you, again, areas where there is air separation and some drag. And last is the elements. You can add the radiator and then the forces. So a lot of the data is inputted before the car is run. So here is regular on the ground moving air, 120 kilometers, and then so forth and so on. So hopefully you guys learned something from this simulation.